Story 1. Lost in the Woods. My name is Tom, and I love going on adventures with my friends. We are a group of 5 guys who have known each other since childhood. We were all looking forward to our next adventure, a trek in the woods. We had planned it for weeks, and everything seemed perfect until we got lost in the woods. The trek started off well, and we were having a great time. The weather was beautiful, and the scenery was breathtaking. We had enough food and water, and we were all in good spirits. But as the day wore on, we realized we had gone off the trail and didn't know where we were. We tried retracing our steps, but nothing seemed familiar. As the night fell, we decided to set up camp and figure out our next steps in the morning. We made a fire and cooked some food. We were all joking and laughing, trying to lighten the mood. But the darkness of the woods and the unknown made us all uneasy. We had a few tents with us, and we set them up in a circle around the fire. We took turns keeping watch, but nothing out of the ordinary happened until it was my turn to keep watch. It was around 2 a.m., and everyone else was asleep. I was sitting by the fire, staring at the darkness beyond the trees when I heard a faint rustling sound. At first I thought it was just an animal, but then the sound grew louder. It sounded like someone was walking through the woods towards our campsite. I stood up and reached for the flashlight, but before I could switch it on, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a man, but something was off about him. He was wearing tattered clothes and had a wild look in his eyes. He stumbled towards me, and I could smell the stench of alcohol on his breath. I didn't know what to do, so I just stood there frozen, clutching the flashlight in my hand. The man reached out and grabbed my arm, and I could feel his dirty fingers digging into my skin. He started mumbling something, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. I tried to pull away, but his grip was too strong. I shouted for my friends to wake up, but they didn't stir. It was like they were in some kind of trance. I felt helpless and alone, with this strange man looming over me. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to free myself from his grasp. Just as I thought it was all over, the man suddenly released me and stumbled away. I watched as he disappeared into the woods, and I was left standing there, shaking and sweating. The rest of the night passed without incident, but I didn't sleep a wink. The image of that man's face and his piercing gaze haunted me. The next morning we packed up our camp and tried to find our way back to the trail. As we walked through the woods, we couldn't shake off the feeling that we were being watched. Every sound made us jump, and every shadow made our hearts skip a beat. We were all on edge, and it seemed like the woods were closing in on us. As the day wore on, we started to run out of food and water. We were tired and hungry, and the fear was getting the better of us. We tried calling for help, but our phones were out of range and we couldn't get a signal. As we walked, we stumbled upon an abandoned cabin. It was old and dilapidated, with boarded-up windows and a rusty door. We debated whether to go inside or not, but our hunger and fatigue got the better of us, and we decided to take shelter. The inside of the cabin was just as spooky as the outside. It was dimly lit, with cobwebs and dust covering everything. The air was thick with the musty smell of decay. We tried to make ourselves comfortable, but the creaking of the floorboards and the eerie silence of the place made us all uneasy. As we settled down, we noticed a strange symbol etched into the wall. It looked like some kind of ancient rune, and it sent shivers down our spines. We tried to ignore it and get some rest, but the feeling of being watched was still there. That's when we heard it. A low, guttural growling sound. It was coming from outside the cabin, and it sounded like something was circling us. We all froze, not knowing what to do. The growling grew louder and more menacing, and we knew we were in trouble. We huddled together, clutching whatever we could find as weapons. We could hear something scratching at the door, and we knew that it was only a matter of time before it broke through. Suddenly, there was a loud bang and the door flew open. In the darkness, we could see the silhouette of a huge black creature. It had glowing red eyes and razor-sharp teeth. It lunged at us, and we all screamed in terror. We tried to fight it off, but it was too strong. It tore through our makeshift weapons and started attacking us one by one. We could feel its hot breath on our faces as it savagely attacked us. We were helpless and outnumbered, and we knew that we were going to die. Just when we thought it was all over, we heard a gunshot. The creature let out a deafening roar and stumbled back. In the confusion, we saw a figure emerge from the shadows. It was the same man who had attacked me the night before. He had a rifle in his hand, and he was aiming at the creature. He fired again, and the creature let out another roar. It started to back away, and then it vanished into the darkness. We were all in shock, not knowing what had just happened. The man walked over to us, and we could see that he had a wild look in his eyes. He didn't say anything, but we could feel his gaze piercing into us. We didn't know whether to thank him or run away from him. We were all too scared to move. The man just stood there for a few more seconds before disappearing into the woods. We sat there in silence for a few minutes trying to process what had just happened. We were all covered in blood and scratches, and we knew that we had narrowly escaped death. We decided to leave the cabin and keep moving, hoping to find our way back to civilization. The rest of the trek was a blur. We walked for hours not knowing where we were going, but eventually we stumbled upon a ranger station. We were rescued and we told them everything that had happened to us. They searched the woods, but they couldn't find any sign of the creature or the man. We were all traumatized by the experience, and we still talk about it to this day. We never went on a trek again, and we never talked about the incident with anyone else. It was like a dark secret that we all shared. Looking back, I still can't believe that it all happened. It feels like a nightmare, and I'm just grateful that we made it out alive. But every time I close my eyes, I can still see the creature's glowing red eyes and the man's haunting gaze. It sends a chill down my spine, and I know that I'll never forget that terrifying night in the woods.
Story 2. The Melody of the Forest. My name is Ron, and I'm recounting the events that transpired about a month ago during our first hiking trip. We were a group of 2 young couples that had booked our trip through an adventure company. We were all excited to explore the great outdoors, and we couldn't wait to embark on this journey together. Little did we know what was waiting for us. We arrived at the designated meeting spot early in the morning, eager to begin our hike. Our group was relatively small, consisting of around 20 people, and we were all excited about what the day had in store for us. We quickly made acquaintances with some of the other hikers and began our journey through the dense forest. The first few hours of the hike were uneventful, and we were all in high spirits, enjoying each other's company and taking in the beautiful surroundings. As we were walking, we heard a strange tune that sounded like an old-fashioned melody, but we couldn't tell where it was coming from. We brushed it off, assuming it was probably someone playing music on their phone. However, the music kept playing on and off, and it began to get louder with each passing minute. We decided to investigate the source of the strange melody, and we quickly realized that it was coming from deep within the forest. We followed the music, and after a few minutes, we stumbled upon a clearing that we hadn't seen before. In the middle of the clearing was a strange contraption that resembled a musical instrument. It was made of wood, and it had strings and pipes attached to it. It looked like something out of an old-fashioned horror movie. We all stared at the contraption in awe, wondering who could have built it and why. Suddenly, the music began playing again, but this time it was coming from the contraption. We were all freaked out and didn't know what to do. We decided to investigate further and began walking towards the instrument. As we got closer, the music stopped abruptly, and we could hear something rustling in the bushes nearby. We all froze, unsure of what was going to happen next. Suddenly, a man emerged from the bushes, and he was carrying a bow and arrow. He looked at us with a cold stare and began walking towards us. We all began backing away slowly, unsure of what to do. The man didn't say a word, and we could see that he was getting agitated. Suddenly, he raised his bow and arrow and pointed it at us. We all froze in fear, not knowing what was going to happen next. Suddenly, a park ranger appeared out of nowhere and told us to back away slowly. We all complied, and the ranger quickly took control of the situation. The man with the bow and arrow was taken away by the ranger, and we were all left standing there in shock. We had no idea what had just happened and why the man had acted so aggressively. We decided to leave the clearing and continue with our hike, hoping that nothing else would happen. However, we were wrong. As we were walking, we could hear the music playing again. This time it was coming from a different direction, but it was the same tune we had heard earlier. We quickly realized that there were multiple instruments playing the same melody, but they were all scattered throughout the forest. We were all freaked out and didn't know what to do. We tried to ignore the music and continue with our hike, but it was impossible. The music was so loud that it felt like it was coming from all directions. We began walking faster, hoping that we would get out of the forest soon. Suddenly, we stumbled upon another clearing, and this time, We could see a group of people playing the strange musical instruments. They were dressed in old-fashioned clothes, and they all had blank stares on their faces. They didn't acknowledge our presence, and they just kept playing the same melody over and over again. It was like they were in a trance. We were all frozen in fear, unsure of what to do. We had never seen anything like this before, and we didn't know how to react. Suddenly, one of the members of our group, Caroline, stepped forward and tried to talk to the musicians. But as soon as she got closer, the music stopped abruptly, and the musicians all turned to face her. We could see that their eyes were completely black, and they had a sinister look on their faces. They began advancing towards us, and we quickly realized that they were not human. They were something else, something sinister and evil. We all began running as fast as we could, trying to get away from the creatures. We could hear them chasing us, and their music was getting louder and louder. It was like they were using the music to control us, to lead us deeper into the forest. We finally managed to get out of the forest, and we ran towards the nearest town. We were all in shock and didn't know what had just happened. We tried to report the incident to the police, but they didn't believe us. They thought we were just a group of kids playing pranks. We decided to leave the town and never look back. We didn't want to take any chances, and we didn't want to risk encountering those creatures again. We never spoke of the incident again, and we all went our separate ways.
Story 3. A terrifying encounter with the unknown. Last weekend, I went on a hiking trip with my 5 friends: Luke, Mia, Ben, Sam, and Emily. We were excited to spend the weekend together in the mountains, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. We packed our backpacks with all the essentials, including food, water, first aid kit, and camping gear. We arrived at the base of the mountain on Friday afternoon, and after setting up our tents, we began our hike towards the summit. The weather was pleasant, and the trail was relatively easy to navigate. We talked and laughed as we hiked, enjoying the breathtaking views of the mountainside. As we approached the summit, we realized that the mountain was largely clear of the woods, except for a small patch that seemed like a dense forest. We decided to explore the forest, hoping to find something interesting. As we entered the forest, my gut told me to stop right there, but I didn't think much of it, and we kept going deeper and deeper into the forest. I could feel a sense of unease creeping over me. The trees were tall and dense, casting a shadow over us. The forest floor was covered in thick undergrowth, making it difficult to walk. We continued on, and I never realized that I had wandered away from my friends. I called out to them, but there was no response. Panic started to set in as I realized that I was lost. I tried calling my friends on my phone, but there was no signal. I kept walking, hoping to find a way out, but the forest seemed never-ending. As night started to fall, I regretted my decision to enter the forest and wished I had stayed with my friends. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my leg, and before I could react, I was hanging upside down from a tree. I had stepped on a trap, and it had snared me. I tried to free myself, but the trap was too strong. I screamed for help, but my voice simply echoed in the forest. As the night wore on, I began to experience mysterious paranormal activities that sent a chill down my spine. I heard whispers and footsteps all around me, but there was no one in sight. I felt a cold breeze, even though there was no wind. The forest seemed to come alive, and I was at the mercy of the unknown. Suddenly, I saw a figure emerging from the darkness. It was a woman, dressed in a white gown with long black hair covering her face. She was walking towards me, and I could feel her eyes piercing through me. I tried to call out to her, but my voice failed me. She stopped in front of me, and I could see her face now. It was pale and lifeless with no expression. She raised her hand and touched my forehead, and I felt a surge of energy coursing through my body. I passed out. The next thing I remember was waking up in my tent with my friends gathered around me. They had been searching for me all night and had finally found me at the break of dawn. They were relieved to see me alive, but I could see the fear in their eyes. I was still clueless about how I had survived. I had no memory of being rescued or brought back to the tent. My friends told me that they had found me hanging upside down from a tree and had to cut me loose. They had carried me back to the tent where I had been unconscious for over 6 hours. As we packed up our things and began our descent, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. I felt that something was following us, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. The forest seemed to be alive, and I could feel its energy pulsating around me. I knew that I had encountered something supernatural. We reached the base of the mountain, and my friends took me to the nearest hospital for a checkup. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong with me, and they were amazed at how I had survived the night in the forest. They told me that I was lucky to be alive, and that I should be grateful to my friends for finding me, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had settled inside me. I knew that what had happened to me in the forest was not a mere accident. There was something sinister at play, something that I couldn't explain. As we drove back to the city, I couldn't help but feel that something was following us. I looked out the window, but there was nothing but the open road. However, I could feel a presence, a malevolent force that was lurking in the shadows. I didn't tell my friends about my fears, not wanting to alarm them, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. The night had left an indelible mark on me, and I knew that I would never be the same again. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to put the incident behind me, but I couldn't forget the feeling of being trapped, of being helpless, and of encountering something beyond my understanding. Then one day, I received a call from Luke, one of my friends from the hiking trip. He told me that he had been experiencing a strange phenomenon in his house, and that he suspected that it was related to what had happened to me in the forest. I was hesitant to believe him, but when he told me about the whispers and footsteps that he had heard, I knew that there was something to his claims. I told him about my own experiences, and we decided to investigate further. We researched the history of the mountain, and found that there had been several disappearances over the years. Some had been attributed to accidents, while others had remained unsolved. But there was a common thread that ran through all the cases: the presence of a female entity that was said to haunt the mountain. We decided to visit the mountain again, this time with a team of paranormal investigators. We entered the forest, and I felt the same sense of unease that had engulfed me the last time. But this time, we were armed with equipment that could detect any paranormal activity. As we walked deeper into the forest, we heard whispers and footsteps all around us. The temperature dropped, and we could see our breaths in the air. Then we saw her, the woman in the white gown. She was standing in front of us, staring at us with her lifeless eyes. We tried to communicate with her, but she remained silent. Then she vanished into thin air, but we could still feel her presence around us. The investigation yielded no concrete evidence, but it confirmed our suspicions. There was something supernatural at play in the forest, and we had encountered it.